That's sort of like liquid church lore. When we say like epic fails, it's like, yes, remember 10 years ago when we talked about ISIS on Mother's Day? After that, we're like, you know what? Let's be strategic and celebrate mom.
Easter last year, we did a helicopter Easter egg drop where we had these helicopters at our campuses that dropped thousands of eggs over fields.
Church is more than 90 minutes on a Sunday. We want to be reaching our people, engaging them, discipling them 7 days a week. And to do that, we need some new tools in our toolbox.
Welcome to Growing Churches with Judson Aulie, where we explore real stories and practical strategies from churches that are thriving so you can grow yours too. Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening in. Today we have with us Liquid Church, and I've been super excited to have Liquid Church as our first guest. We've been working with Liquid for a while now, and they've been just an awesome church to work with. Over the years, churches that I've spoken to, they've told us, oh, Liquid Church has been, a huge influence on us, especially in the digital space. So that gets me excited because I know there's a lot of churches that could benefit from this conversation. So what I'd love to do, I'd love to start just by hearing a bit about both of your backgrounds, Lauren and Brooke, and how you got into doing communications at Liquid. So maybe we could start with Brooke there and hear kind of more about your background.
Sure. Thanks, Judson. Thanks for having us today. So my name is Brooke Stempert. I'm the communications manager at Liquid Church. And I've been at Liquid now for almost 8 years, Lauren and I working together. So as a church home, I've called Liquid my church home for 10 years now. I came up here right out of my college. I moved up to North Jersey and got involved with Liquid right away. It's been a great journey. Prior to actually working at Liquid, I worked in public relations at a healthcare PR agency. Yeah, I like to say I started out caring for the body, but now I get to care for the soul. So it's been an honor.
That's great. And Lauren, let's hear from you.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Lauren Bercarich. I am the digital director at Liquid Church. I previously held the title as communications director, but have been here nearly 10 years. So I've gotten to morph through different roles. And as Brooke said, we work hand in hand. My background is actually in journalism. I was a TV news reporter. So exactly what you imagine, the people on the street, hanging onto a tree in the middle of a hurricane, or reporting on politics and crime from whatever street corner. That was me for about a decade, then transitioned into public relations, and Liquid was my church home. It's just one of those God things where one day you're having dinner with your pastor and he's telling you, hey, why don't you apply for this job? And then suddenly next week you're thinking to yourself, what is happening here? I'm just totally switching career paths and going into ministry. And it's been such a blessing. So really excited for this conversation.
That's awesome. We were talking briefly about hurricanes. I'm down in Florida, and I can now just picture you, being there on the news during those crazy hurricanes. So that's awesome. So it's cool to hear about both of your backgrounds, and a lot of that is obviously super applicable to the jobs that you have now. And I know you both have been doing an incredible job at Liquid. What I'd love to kind of go into, you've all done a great job in the digital space, like I said in the beginning. And now while a lot of churches were kind of forced to go into that digital space and do online church through COVID, you all were doing that well before that. And I know Liquid, what I was hearing is Liquid was one of the first churches to have a digital pastor or an online pastor. So I'd love to hear more. Maybe Lauren, maybe you could share more about that.
Yeah, so it's incredible. We actually had a church online presence before I even came on board. So as I said, I'm hitting my 10-year mark, and they'd started before that. I think it was like one of the original crew on our team. And so I like to give credit to my lead pastor for that, because I think he's really visionary and future focused and looking at what's ahead. So our church online pastor, he's actually kind of church famous now. If anybody knows Aussie Dave or Dave Adamson, came all the way from Australia to be our church online pastor in New Jersey, which was incredible and helped us really forge that initial path. What's been beautiful is how it's morphed over time, because what I think early on is it was like church online was a nice to have, and in some cases treated a little bit like the redheaded stepchild of like, well, in person is always going to be more important, and church online is over here and we're not going to resource it in the same way. Now, post-COVID, we realize no. Digital is part of the holistic church. It's part of our future and where we need to be investing more. So we were set up really well for when we hit COVID and for growth coming thereafter. So it's kind of like the sky's the limit now. And I'm just so grateful that we laid that groundwork early on.
That's great. Yeah. And so you really embraced that digital side from the beginning, being one of those first churches. Tell me more about that, how you've kind of embraced the digital ministry and what have been the biggest challenges and the successes along the way.
Yeah, so I would say we really doubled down in 2022 and we said we're going to actually create a digital department. And so I lead that department now. And that was a big thing because it's like, hey, we're creating new roles, new staff. We're doing investment, not just with staff, but partners. Like we're going to invest with partners to help us launch a new app and a new website and to make sure that we have all the resources that we need and we're going about this in the right way. What we really said was, we're going to invest in a new strategy. And the strategy is 7 days of discipleship and acknowledging that church is more than 90 minutes on a Sunday. We want to be reaching our people, engaging them, discipling them 7 days a week. And to do that, we need some new tools in our toolbox. We need not just a new strategy, but I would actually say it's a total culture shift for our organization to realize that we're a body that is engaging with people 7 days a week, for our church to even understand our congregants, like this is how we do church now. We're going to be in the app together. We're going to be praying for each other. We're going to be reading scripture together. We are going to be engaging all the time. And so that's something that we're just 2.5 years old, our whole department. And I feel like we've taken a phenomenal amount of ground in that time. And it's just been incredible to be a part of that.
That's awesome. So cool to hear. Yeah, you've all done an incredible job in that way. And it's so important to be, the reality is, and I speak to a lot of churches who are like still hesitant, like, oh, how much should be online? That's where people are nowadays. So as a church, we need to be where other people are. And you all have done an awesome job with that. And I know that you've influenced a lot of churches in that way as well. I know that from churches I've spoken to, there's sometimes fears around that innovation. And I think it's because of the risk kind of involved. And I'd love to hear, how does Liquid foster a culture of innovation, even, while managing, I guess, those risks?
For sure. No, I think that's a great question. And honestly, I think the encouragement to innovate really is built into Liquid's culture. No matter what department we're looking at, digital communications, family, otherwise, I really would say our lead team does definitely encourage innovation. So I do feel like as a result, our staff aren't really afraid to try new things and take some risks. I know when I first came into Liquid, people would talk often about how we would do anything short of sin to communicate the gospel in a way that strikes well with people. So yeah. I think that's been a great value. And then even just as a little bit of background too, I would say as a church we have some core values. I can share those. So grace wins, truth is relevant, and church is fun. So that's really something that we land on with our congregation. But then as a staff, we also have a set of values that kind of guide our work. So those are trust, excellence, and humility. And I would really say, I think innovation, I think it falls into that excellence category, right? And you have to be humble too if you're going to be innovating, because you will try and sometimes fail. But yeah, I think it's been great. It's been a great value to have as a staff to encourage us to try new things. We're a church, right? We want to use our God-given talents to advance the gospel. And we need to be able to communicate that with power and excellence. And communication is changing and is always changing in a digital world. So I think another thing that really does help us too, just in managing those risks, is we have a really strong feedback culture. So feedback is really important. You're not going to know if you're succeeding or failing if you're not getting good feedback. So we're not afraid of it. Since my day one at Liquid, we've not been afraid of feedback. It's a good thing. So it's great to get new ideas come from feedback, new perspectives. And even I would say, Lauren, with digital analytics, you guys with the digital team have really helped to grow that too, and being able to see some of the ways that we're advancing in the digital world.
Yeah, Brooke, that's a great point, because I feel like in the digital space, what you can do, Judson, is you can pivot quickly, right? You can look at data and metrics and you can see this isn't working or that is working. And then you can change course as needed, right? You can double down on something that's working well. You can pivot away from something that isn't working. And then I just really feel so blessed that we have this culture of willing to take risks and being okay with failing. And it's not failing because we didn't put in an effort. That's the thing. That's a differentiator. We're like, listen, if we're going to go down in flames, it's going to be excellent. We did our best. We put all our effort to it and it didn't work. And we can learn from it. I'll give an example of something that we learned in the digital space. I was kind of had this feeling that more is more, like more is better. We have to put more content out there. And so in our app, last year, we launched two things that overlapped with each other. We launched this big initiative, this 21-day marriage journey in our app. And people were super pumped for it, and they joined the app. 2 weeks into the marriage journey, I launched another digital product in the app, these deep breath devotionals that our people love. And I was like, yeah, they're going to love it. Like, we're giving them more content. Well, you know what? I learned people don't have the capacity to do all of these things. So I cannibalized both of these products that we worked so hard on. So the marriage journey dipped. The deep breath didn't do as well as it usually did. And I went and I talked to some people in the church world who I like trust and value afterwards. And they just emphasize, they're like, yeah, actually, you have to think about pruning what you do. Like people only have so much bandwidth in their lives. They can only do so much. So you might have the capacity to give them more. They don't have the capacity to do more. And so now I realize I need to be a little bit more strategic with how much I'm presenting to people when I'm giving it to them because we're putting so much effort in. So for me, I was like, you know what? That hurt in the moment of like, I made this mistake, but now I know how to proceed in the future. So, you got to try some things out and learn from them.
Yeah. I mean, everything. It's like, you got to take risks if you want to succeed in areas. I love that. And I mean, in the church world, it should be even more so like, hey, with grace, it's like, yeah, we don't need to be perfect. We need to try things.
Exactly.
We need to fail. We need, but I love the feedback too, that you guys are big on feedback. And our team has been working on that too, of like continuing to be better with feedback. It's so important. So that's awesome to hear. Thanks for sharing that. Another question, how do you balance the experience of online and on-site church? Or I guess, how does Liquid move from people engaging with content online to actually getting involved with the church? Whether that's attending a service, joining a group, or volunteering.
Sure.
Yeah. Brooke, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I can just jump in. So from communications, we have actually an evangelism strategy. And so we wouldn't look at church online as competing anymore now that we have learned that really it can be a front door to our church, which is great because that's a tool, right? People will check us out online before they actually step foot in one of our doors. So at Liquid, we have an evangelism strategy, and we also have an assimilation strategy. So our evangelism strategy really aims at, creating opportunities for people to not only invest in their community, but to invite people out. And so we want to make it easy. We want to put the cookies on the bottom shelf, as we like to say, so that people are more willing to take that extra step to make an invitation. I mean, we do this in a variety of ways. Beyond digital, we'll do invite cards, we'll do posters, we'll do all sorts of crazy things to give people tools. But digitally, I mean, social media is a huge tool. Church online is a huge tool to be able to give people that first experience of Liquid. And we want to put our best foot forward, right? So that's why we do put a lot of intentionality into our digital experiences, our digital areas where people can interact with us as a church, like social media, right? It's not just a highlight reel, it's an opportunity for ministry. So I'll say, like, social media is a great example of a tool where we find that people will invite their friends, they will tag their friends, they will repost our content to their stories, and that broadens our audience. That gives us, the opportunity to reach potential new guests. And we're really intentional too about the areas that we really highlight and invest in throughout the year from an evangelism perspective. So I could give an example. Easter last year, we did a helicopter Easter egg drop where we had these helicopters at our campuses that dropped thousands of eggs over fields. It was a huge draw, but obviously something like that, we need to spread the word. We don't want to just...
coolest Easter egg hunt ever. I wish my kids could have done that.
Oh, it was a ball. I mean, Lauren, I know your kids were there and had their hair blowing.
Yes,
No
absolutely.
way. Is that right? That's awesome.
But we were really intentional in some of the tools that we created and some of the ways that we tried to spread the word digitally about that. I mean, I can give an example. We tried Spotify ads for the first time. We actually got to partner with you guys on that, which was
Yeah.
really awesome to try and, utilize something new to us. We had done radio ads in the past, but we had never gotten into streaming. And that's where people are at, right? They're listening on Spotify and Apple Music. They're listening on their streaming services. So that was a great opportunity to just reach a new audience and to target to who controls the calendar for the family. It's moms.
Hmm.
And millennial moms are one of our target audiences that because we've just realized we have such attractional kids programming. Moms control the calendar. It's a great opportunity to reach that demographic. And so we targeted our ads towards moms, people listening to parenting podcasts, people listening to Christian music, looking for an opportunity to find a church for Easter. So that would just be a great example of something that like we really just leaned in from an evangelism perspective, and we utilize a lot of digital tools to be able to do that.
And that's a
Yeah.
great, I mean, that's a great one to run an ad for, a helicopter egg drop. Like who wouldn't want to go see that if they saw that ad?
It's an extreme opportunity. It kind of sells
Yeah.
itself, but
Right.
you got to identify those opportunities on the calendar throughout the year. And it might not look like a helicopter drop. It might look like, I mean, we know that for churches, Mother's Day is actually a really highly attended Sunday. So we have another epic fail. There was one season where we were actually preaching. Our pastor was preaching on ISIS on Mother's Day, and
Really?
so that was something that we were just like, you know what, this is a learning. We really need to
Yeah, maybe that's
optimize for the moms.
That's sort of like Liquid Church lore. When we say like epic fails, it's like, yes, remember 10 years ago when we talked about ISIS on Mother's Day? After that, we're like, you know what? Let's be strategic and celebrate moms
Let's look at
instead.
this calendar and figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have opportunities that you can actually share and market externally beyond the church, or even giving our congregants an opportunity to invite their friends, invite their moms, invite their grandmas to come celebrate. So we'll do it up. We consider it like a big day. So you don't necessarily need to have a helicopter dropping eggs from the sky. Just identify those opportunities within your church.
Judson, if I could, I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit on this one. The balance of online and on-site church to ensure
Hmm.
complement versus competition. Something I push back against is the idea that they are in competition. Like if I
Mm.
invest in church online, people are going to leave my buildings and they're
Mm.
going to decimate the
But
in-person
the
church.
building is the church.
Right. I mean, just think about anything you do in the marketplace, right? Like my favorite place to shop is Target. Love you, Target. Love my Target app. I'm online. I'm in store. I'm picking up. That's how people do life now. That's how we should be culturally relevant and culturally current. The church should be doing the same thing. So it was historically that church online, even for us in those early days, was like church online really existed to get people to physical locations. Like that's what we wanted to do. Don't stay here, go there. And then we always thought that if one had to be growing and one had to not be doing well, that's the only way it could work, right? So it's like in-person church was always doing well. COVID happened in New Jersey. We had major lockdowns. So then church online skyrockets. And the idea was, okay, well, both can't be doing good. And I just knew that both could be up and to the right. That was like the soapbox internally that I kept hitting. And we saw that come to fruition in 2023, post COVID, because we invested in online just like we invest in person. We said, we're going to hire a full-time pastor. We're going to have somebody oversee this strategically. We're going to grow this platform. And it's been true ever since 2024, the start of 2025 here. Both areas of our organization are growing. They're not always going to be exactly the same, right? If we are giving out flowers on Mother's Day, we can't give you flowers if you're watching online, right? That's okay.
Right.
We have to live with that tension. But I just want people to be encouraged that think of how you do life now and how you shop is just a great one-to-one comparison. You can do things both in person and digitally, and both are growing that business. Both can be growing your church, and you can reach people in both atmospheres.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, Yeah, and like going back to that's where people are now. People are online. So there's so many people there's a ton of people who don't want to walk into a church. They don't want to step into a church. So are we just going to ignore those people or are we going to really invest in that, right? And I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. I have another great example. I mean,
Yeah.
Lauren, I know this year we started streaming our worship nights for the first time. And that was a great example of, hey, people didn't just watch worship night online and not show up in person. We actually reached more people because of it. So that was just like super, super exciting to see, just continuing to reach new people with both doors.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
room was full, and then we had another 1,000+ people watching online that we wouldn't have reached otherwise.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious in terms of, so for your online church and, obviously in person, people are meeting people there and getting involved in small group and so on. How does that work on on the online side when people are really involved on the online side? Do you see a lot of people, do you see people coming through to get involved in a small group after being involved in the online church?
Yeah, so that's a great question because we do want to move from just viewing, right? Like I'm a viewer,
Mhm.
I'm watching church to being part of a community and engaging with the church. So we do have virtual small groups and online small groups because that is how
Yeah.
some people prefer to engage for whatever reason, right? They're too far from the church, they have limitations, and that's how they feel comfortable. So we want to definitely offer digital environments for community. And we're going to grow deeper in that this year, like even offering ways to contribute and do online outreach and different things like that. So we want to provide that. But we also do invite our church online community to engage with us in person in other ways. Like, in other words, a lot of our people online are watching in New Jersey. They're actually within driving distance of one of our physical locations.
Yeah.
But we'll say, hey, it's Christmas time. We're doing our Christmas outreach. Come on out and serve with
Yep.
us in person. And they do that. So they'll
Yeah.
they'll like do their Sunday routine online, but sometimes they'll attend our special events in person. So it doesn't have to be either or. You can move between environments.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I love that you guys are doing the online groups as well. I've got my small group at church, but I also have this cohort between these guys is called the Forge Man cohort, where basically it's helping dads be like better leaders, better husbands, better fathers. And that I get so much out of that. And it's just a Zoom call, it's like every month
That's awesome.
we still haven't actually, we're all over the country. We haven't actually met up in person, but it's amazing what you can do online.
Yeah.
So walk me through some of the core pillars of Liquid Church digital strategy. How do you prioritize platforms like your website, app, YouTube, and social media?
Okay, I'll jump in first with this and then I'll let Brooke handle social media because that's her forte. I would say something that's very core to who we are, I mentioned a little bit earlier in the digital strategy, is just that idea of 7 days of discipleship. We want to both be able to reach people throughout the week, right? Beyond Sundays. We also want to be able to disciple them and care for them 7 days a week. And so that drives a lot of what we do. We've also really poured into clarifying our target audiences with digital because there was a time where we were trying to be all things to all people, particularly on our website. And when you're trying to be all things to all people, turns out you are nothing to no one. And so it actually helps to be very specific with who you want to reach. So our website is targeted towards new guests. We want to reach people with our website. So the type of content we put on the website, the language that we use, the things that we elevate on our website. For example, one of our core audience groups we're targeting, number one is millennial moms. So we need to platform our family content. Number two is young adults. So you'll find on our homepage ways to serve and outreach opportunities because the next generation really cares about that. With our app, it's really an insider tool. It's really for our congregation where we are praying for each other, we're interacting with each other, we're in community groups with each other. And so we really try to be specific about that. And then with YouTube, oh man, YouTube is just a core platform for us in so many ways. It is actually tied to Church Online because that is our primary on-demand viewing platform for the message. So we premiere new content on YouTube every Sunday. And we want people to join us there. And that is like an area where we see exponential growth with on-demand views. And we do really see that as a front door to the church. So people find us on YouTube. Maybe from there they end up on our website. Maybe from there they end up attending a full church online service, or they end up visiting one of our locations. And so it's kind of a step by step, right? Sometimes the idea is like, hey, I'm going to run a Google search ad that is going to link to a blog that's going to get them to my website. And from the blog they're reading on their website, they're going to click on a next step, which is, could be anything. I'm going to attend this marriage journey. I'm going to join a small group, etc. And it's kind of like these breadcrumbs that you're leaving people to try to reach them, engage them, and help them take their next steps. So those are those three platforms, but Brooke is our social guru. So Brooke, what do you think?
Yeah, so it's actually really cool because, I've been at Liquid for a while now. I've gotten to see the evolution of social media for our ministry. So when I first started, Instagram was a pretty new channel to now, we've seen the launch of TikTok, and all of our campuses and many of our systems all have their own channels too. And we've really developed a pretty robust social media system. So it's been really great. But I know social media can be intimidating for a lot of churches just because you constantly need to feed the beast. You need engaging content. You need to monitor engagement. You need to encourage people to engage with your content. You need to constantly be analyzing what's working, what's not, keeping up with trends, jumping on opportunities quickly, and social media changes fast. So if there are churches listening who are struggling with, what to prioritize on social media, just know we see you. It is an area that can be overwhelming, but there is some really great opportunity too. I mentioned, social media, it can be a ministry. So it's not just about the likes. It's not just about promoting what's happening at your church. It's an opportunity to really engage with people. We have people who DM us prayer requests. There's a great opportunity to get people connected and just meet them right where they're at, and have relationship, have conversations.
Mhm.
And like we said with church online, social media also, it's a front door to your church. So having a presence isn't the end all. You actually also need to be putting your best foot forward on social media. Because again, that's another area where people might check out our website, they might check out church online, but they're also going to check out our social media channels probably before they even take a step through one of our physical campuses. So we really have, over the years, we aim to put forth an authentic presence on social media because that's what people want to see. They don't want to see just the top highlights. They want to see an authentic presence. They want to see our pastors, our staff. They want to see themselves and be able to just engage in a way throughout the week that is authentic. So that is something also that when done wrong, social media can actually be a deterrent for new guests too. So it is
Absolutely.
something that over the years we just continue to develop and we take pretty seriously. But if there are any communications and social media leaders listening to, you cannot do it alone. You need support. So I say this not as a department of one. We have a ton of volunteers and we have support from some talented graphic designers and videographers. It's actually a really great opportunity to get volunteers involved with your church. So not everyone is going to want to be on the worship team. Not everyone's going to want to be greeting guests at the door. You might have some really skilled marketplace leaders who want to serve behind the scenes. And some people who just have a hope and a desire to contribute in some way, but can actually learn social media too. So it's great. We've seen some really wonderful volunteers just stepping into roles at our campuses over the years. So Liquid's a multi-site church, and all of our campuses have both Instagram and Facebook. So we've identified social media leaders. We'll train them up, give them best practices, and then we kind of hand over what we call the keys to the kingdom for social media. And they lead these pages. So we're empowering others at our church to take a step in as well, to be able to be a part of it. Because it is also a ministry.
Yeah, that's great. Empowering others to handle each of those for each campus, right? I mean, I've talked to churches who are multi-site, and it's a challenge of like, do we have one social media for all of them? Do we have separate for each one? But then who's going to be in charge? Are they going to stay consistent with it? And it sounds like you've got volunteers even helping with a lot, on that end.
Yeah. And I will say, I've spoken with other church leaders who approach social media very differently, right? Where, hey, because this is a front door to our church, we want everything to be as curated as possible. But because, we're a larger church and we need a few more hands at the
Mhm.
table with 7 campuses and just a lot of really robust ministry programs. So you'll even see like our worship team has a social media presence on Instagram, family team as well. So these have just been some ways that we've been able to really build up more content that engages specific audiences.
Yeah, I've definitely used Liquid as an example for a lot of churches for just check out their social media, check out their YouTube, check out their website. So many times with your website, I've actually used your website. I hope that's okay. Multiple times. But I can't tell you how many churches, going back to what you said, Lauren, like how many churches they set up their website and they don't show who they're trying to target. Like they don't show, they're obviously, a lot of churches are trying to bring in other young families, but there's no photos of young families on their website. So, I mean, I talk to a lot of churches. Well, I'll hop on their website, and what I see is maybe there's an image of a cross or image of their church building. And it's like, if I land on that website, my first thought is like, it's probably all old people that go there. I'm going to go to the next website to check out another church. And then also like making sure that you target people who are looking for a church rather than, there's a lot of churches that'll have something it'll be, giving as the main call to action or donate, rather than like plan your visit or, new here. And I'm sure you've seen this too on church websites where you land on it and you don't even know where the church is located and you don't know when the service times. Like I'll search through, and I do this all the time. And even for me, it's hard to find, where are they located? Where's their service times? So that's huge. Making sure that you figure out who's that target audience and make it super clear to them what they should do next.
Yeah. The hardest part of that is you have to say no to some people within your organization. It's like, wow, but we need all of our small group guides posted to our website. It's like, no, because our website isn't for serving insiders. Like we moved,
Right,
we had that previously. Our small group guides are on our app because that's for insiders. Or it's like, well, all our kids' Bible lessons, we want to post them all. It's like, nope, that's not what it's for. This is for a new family who's going to come, and we're going to answer their questions about what do they need to know before they visit for the first time, or how can we help them feel secure? How can we actually show them what it looks like? Show them the experience so they feel confident about it. So you'll have a lot of times where people will ask you questions or they'll make requests, and you have to make those decisions and remember to envision them with the purpose of your platform. What is the purpose of this website? And that will help you kind of be like your guiding star to help you make those decisions and stick to it. And it's really been fruitful for us.
Yeah. I remember you shared your persona, or what was the people that you're focusing on. You've got like a whole PDF on that, which I thought was so cool. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is really, really fun. So we took a lot of time to figure out like, what are the core audience groups we're going to go after? And so Brooke and I have mentioned a couple of times our number one that rose to the top are millennial moms. We actually created AI personas. So we have a picture and we had our staff vote on names. So she is Cotton Chaos Casey and her hair looks a little frazzled.
Yeah.
I actually fall into this group, and the idea is that, hey, listen, moms are making a lot of the decisions. Like, so whether Sunday mornings are Target runs, soccer games, or going to church, that's really going to fall on her. And what are her needs, right? Like, she's feeling overwhelmed by the stresses of family and work and carrying the mental load of the household. A lot of times she feels like she's juggling everything on her own, right? She doesn't have a village to kind of support her and help her. Now, this is where if we identify the felt needs, we can identify how the church can help, right? So we want to think about her in everything that we do. So I'll just give a practical example of, we hosted this special comedy marriage night. We had Michael Jr. come to our church and we did this thing, and we're like, I understand you're having this and you're inviting couples, but what about childcare? The moms are going to have to be the ones who figure out who's watching the kids. They're going to have to set that up. And so we stretched ourselves to provide childcare for this event. Really affordable. I don't know. It was something ridiculous, like drop off your kids for $5, that's unheard of in New Jersey, because we thought of what would serve our millennial moms most, give them a night out where they don't have to stress about who's going to care for the kids. And that's a guiding light for us in digital experiences, physical experiences, and then Second in our ranking is young adults. We're definitely pursuing the next generation. Third for us are men in midlife. And this is a little aspirational for us. We just realized that our men in our community are feeling a little isolated. They don't have a lot of community. There's a lot of burdens on their shoulders, and we want to start serving them better. And then fourth for us, and you don't have to have this many, by the way, totally aspirational, are singles. Just we know the population of singles is growing exponentially. They're a very vocal group within our church. They want to know, how can they make connections? How can they meet others? And we're not trying to be, match.com. We just want to make sure that they don't feel excluded, right? That we want to make sure they understand there is a place for them at our church. And so by having these target audiences, we can filter everything we do through a lens of how are we caring for, reaching, and serving these particular groups.
That's great. So cool. I think if more churches could develop something like that, it would help tremendously in terms of setting up their website correctly, setting up their social media and everything. So that's great. That was really cool when you shared that with us. I thought, and I vividly remember the AI image of the crazy hair and
Yes. And what's funny, Judson, is we rank them because we decide, the website can't actually serve all four of those groups, for example. So we say mom is first. We're going to make a lot of nods to her on this. And then next gen. And those are the only two we're going to specifically write for, choose photos for, choose videos for, structure for, because those are our top two audiences.
Yeah. Okay. That's very cool. Yeah. Going back to, you mentioned the felt needs. I'd love to hear, how does Liquid continue to stay relevant and to continue to serve the needs of the community? I know you guys have done an incredible job of really meeting the felt needs of people. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I'll jump in first, Brooke, and then please add anything that you feel is relevant. But Brooke and I have both really fostered and contributed to the creation of a robust blog. And we've been doing this since 2016. By the way, everybody, blogging is not dead. It's still super, super relevant. I remember when I had an account with Blogger, which is totally dates me, but today, it's still huge for SEO, and that's a place where we want to be so people can find us. And so I feel like on our blog, we are trying to address felt needs. We actually have, if you were on our website or our app, you would see we have carousels of content based on categories. We have blogs for parents. We have blogs for relationships. We have blogs for mental and emotional health. We have blogs for young adults per our audience. And we have blogs for spiritual growth, and so people can learn as well. And so we're trying to address felt needs, right? Being really super authentic and vulnerable with our parents, writing about their own parenting struggles, their learnings, and then trying to provide wisdom and advice for others. Same thing with mental and emotional health, right? We struggled with anxiety, we struggle with burnout, people struggle with depression. People share their stories, their learnings, strategies for growth. And we find that these actually help our people who are already in our congregation. This is one of those tools actually that is both for reach and keep. For our people here, they feel cared for and seen, and they can engage with that. And then other people discover us that way. They literally think about going into Google, they search for something, right? How to cope with anxiety. And then one of our blogs may show up in those search results. And that's their first introduction to Liquid Church. So I feel like that's one tool we use to address felt needs in the digital space. What do you think, Brooke?
Yeah, no, that's great. Blogging for sure. It's even helped us with, Google Ads. We've been doing Google Ads for years to optimize the nonprofit grant for churches. And blogs have been a huge driver for those ads, meeting people where they're at in searches, and being able to drive people to our website to not just read the blog and learn from that, but with hope that they would continue and take another next steps. It's been really great. And also just from a social media perspective too, I just add, one way that we've seen people really just want to resonate with our digital presence is they don't want to see branded graphics. They don't want to see promotional posts. They want to see relevant content. And we want to meet people where they're at with that as well on social media. So we've seen just for our followers that they want to celebrate what God is doing at Liquid. Most new people and people involved in the congregation alike. Our congregation wants to see their friends and community. They want to see happy, smiling people. They Want to see people living life together for Jesus and hear awesome stories, testimonies, right, of life change. But that's all content that still really engages with new guests as well, because it gives them a glimpse into the life of our church before they even step foot. So it's just a great way to showcase the personality of our church, but also to invite guests into the conversation. And we can give people those tools, right, to engage with us and to learn right where they are already at. They're already scrolling social media. They're already typing into Google and searching for faith answers. So just being able to tailor our digital content in a way that really meets people where they are has been really beneficial for us.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's, I mean, I tell churches this all the time, like, hey, people are looking online for these things they're going through in their life, right? Big life events, these felt needs, even, faith-based questions. And you guys cover all of that on your blog, which is so cool. And I remember I did a search recently of literally just typing in like church blog, and Liquid Church was the first thing to come up. And that's from all of that work you guys have put in into putting, creating blog posts for churches, for people. And the reality is, like, when people have something that they're going through, what's the first thing they do? They usually will go to Google, right? Before they go to a therapist, before they go to, even their parents, they'll type into Google, why is this happening, right? To get that answer. And that's what's so cool about writing blog content on felt needs topics, is that you get to show up both organically, and then obviously, Brooke, you mentioned the Google grant, using that 10,000 free ads every month. That's an awesome way to be showing up. And we tell churches all the time, like, yeah, you can use the Google grant to show up for, church near me. But what gets us more excited is showing up for those felt needs topics, right? Meeting people where they're at, which is what you guys keep saying. So that is so cool. So another question for you here. So discipleship in the digital space, I know a lot of churches mention can be tricky.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of foster that spiritual growth and community when people engage primarily online, how do you do that? I know, Lauren, you kind of touched on that a little bit in the beginning.
Yeah. It is tricky. It's not like we have all the answers to this figured out, but we are definitely diving into it and investing in it more. So for church online, what's interesting is if you attend a live service, you do have the opportunity to request prayer during that service and have a live chat. So that's one way you can get cared for in that moment. And then our church online pastor, he is such a phenomenal shepherd. He follows up with people. So you are going to get like a phone call afterwards. So there's this mix of like, it's not always has to be impersonal. You can take something digital, become known, and then have this personal follow-up. So I love that. And then if you're using the app itself, the prayer component is just the most valuable player in the app, because you can submit your own prayer requests and then you can pray for other people in the congregation, right? There's these two roles. And I feel like previously prayer was like delegated. It's like, well, that's the purview of the pastors and the prayer team. They're the only people who can pray for anybody, right? It's actually, I feel like, been a great tool in teaching us that no, we are meant to pray and care for each other. And so it's this beautiful place where you can see the felt needs of others and you can pray for them. And I just want to say it makes the in-person lobby experiences that much more incredible. I can't tell you how many times I'm inputting prayers into the app, right? It's midweek, whenever it's happening. And then I walk into church on a Sunday and somebody pulls me to the side and they check in on me. Hey, how are you doing? I've been praying for you. How's your son doing? He's just been on my mind
So cool.
this whole week. I had this incredible experience where his small group leader, my son's small group leader on Sundays, he's in the elementary classroom. She was watching my prayer requests as I was praying for my son as he was struggling in school. And she was then following up with me and talking to me and what did he need and what was he going through, so that she could then care for him better in the classroom on Sundays. It's like, I
That's so
cannot
cool.
believe how this is elevating the care for me. I mean, she and I were like crying in the lobby together and hugging. And I got to be honest, I never would have walked into church on a Sunday. She would have seen me and said, hey, how are you doing? And I would have just been like, oh, well, let me tell you about what my son's struggling with right now. I would have just said, oh, we're fine.
Wow.
But the app where I'm being kind of authentic and I'm putting my prayer requests because I desperately need them, I want to be prayed for, has then created these deepening relationships. in person. And that's just one example of that. So I really think, these things work very well together.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And it's easier just on the app and online to even have some of those conversations that it's not as easy to have in person, especially when you're at church. Sometimes you're in a rush trying to get your kids and, so that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Love that.
And
Yeah.
I can even add on to that
yeah, go
too,
ahead, Brooke.
like from my own experience utilizing the app. I have people who follow me from the congregation from my small group who, if I type a prayer in the app, they get a notification, hey, Brooke is asking for prayer. And I have one girlfriend who, God bless her, every time I add an app prayer, she texts me right after and I see, hey, she's praying for me. She's following up with me. It's just even amplified an in-person experience, right? I lead a small group. My small group member is offering to pray for me, but it's integrating this digital element where she saw me add prayer in the app and she's following up with me, which has been just really cool to see. Like, you feel seen, right? It's not just this vast unknown group of app users. It's the people within your community.
Yeah, that's awesome. I couldn't have asked for a better answer on that. So I know we're kind of coming to the end of time, and I want you guys to be able to get back to it. Couple last questions I have for you. I'd love to hear. Obviously, going digital and making sure you have a good online presence is huge nowadays, and so there are still a lot of churches, especially churches that have been around for a long time. Maybe they've got a lot of leadership that are quite a bit older, and there's a communications person that has come in that they've hired. But a lot of times what I hear is like they can't do much because leadership, is maybe a little bit unsure about certain things, right, in the digital space. So what advice, maybe Lauren, you could answer this, what advice would you give to church leaders, communications directors trying to get buy-in from senior leadership for investing in digital ministry? And how do you navigate those conversations? I guess at Liquid, it sounds like there's probably not a whole lot of having to navigate. You guys are all, I feel like, Tim, you guys are all on board, right? But I guess for some of these churches that are not as big into innovation and change, what would be a good conversation to have?
So I got to be honest, it wasn't always this way. Coming out of COVID, there was like, we loved digital for a time. And then we entered the season, we called it homecoming, where we were like, get off of digital, everybody, and come back in person. At the time, it was like a dagger to my heart, I got to be honest. And so
digital person, yeah.
It didn't really work, to be honest. Some people came back, but people were like, no, we're still kind of over here in the digital space. And I can remember, this is 2021, preparing this huge presentation for our leadership team and just feeling like I was pushing a rock uphill, but I needed to convince them that this was the way forward. And so part of it I would say is, you've got to put your all into it. And sometimes you need to involve outside voices. We actually consulted, right, with other churches, what they were doing, other experts, what they were doing. It couldn't just be like, well, I have a hunch this is going to work. We need to do our research. We need to talk to others, see what they're doing. And with all of that effort that we put into that, I felt like everybody was able to get on board and say oh, you know what? Yeah, that is the way forward. So I would say is you can't avoid the conversation. I don't think a digital transition can be siloed. If you don't have the buy-in of your leadership, I really don't think it will work, because you need the buy-in of your leadership to not only platform the transition to digital, but you need it to resource the transition to digital, which means staffing, vendors, partnerships, etc. And so I want people to lean into that conversation, but don't think that they have to do it alone. Reach out to other churches, see what they've done. I mean, I even did a call one time. Somebody said, can you just get on Zoom and speak to my leadership team? And I was like, I will do that. And then other people did that for us, because we're kind of all in it together, which I love about being in the ministry world as opposed to the marketplace. But I would say that you really need to try to get the senior leadership on board. So don't give up, lean into it, but do your research in advance so you can show them how it's helping other churches grow and reach more people with the gospel.
I love that, doing that research and hearing from other churches. And I think that's going to help a lot of the leadership to see, oh, okay, yeah, it is working for a lot of these churches. That's great. Okay, one more question for you. If a church leader or communications director is listening and feels overwhelmed by the idea of digital ministry, where would you tell them to start? Or, what's the first most impactful step they can take?
That's a really good question.
Maybe Brooke, we can start with you.
Yeah, I mean, from a social media perspective, I can speak into that just because I know I touched on earlier that can be a very overwhelming area. It's easy to say, hey, I need to be on these 17 platforms. I need to be posting multiple times a day. Start with one, right? What do you have currently? Do you already have Facebook? Do you already have Instagram? Where are you already at? And try to optimize there. It might be that you're posting once or twice a week. Try to increase that incrementally, right? Maybe you want to try and set a goal to post once every day. Maybe you're only using one or two types of content where you're posting. Try out a new content form. Try out posting the stories on Instagram. Try out vertical videos if you're not already. Try integrating a new trend once a month. Just taking baby steps to try and prioritize, and honestly, coming up with goals too would be a great way, like Lauren said earlier, a North Star to try and help guide your strategy as you chomp a little bit more, make it bite-sized.
Yeah, I would say if you're going to find a place to start for any church, I would say let's start with your website, because the website tells people so much about who you are. And so when I click on your website, the average visit to a website is less than 60 seconds. People are making a judgment call very quickly on whether they like what you have to offer or they don't like what you have to
Or they
offer.
hit the back button.
Yes, they hit it quickly. It's like that bounce rate of like, ooh, don't like that. Let me head back, right? This isn't where I want to be. And so I would say that's a great place to start, because you want to make sure that you're reaching people and you're telling your story about who you are well, with how you express yourself. And that's both visual and with the language that you use. And there are so many wonderful vendors out there that can help you. In other words, you do not have to do the website launch all in-house. I've done one in-house. That's a big job. Let me just tell you, it is really big. Most recently, we hired a partner to help us do that. It doesn't mean that you're not involved, because you're guiding some of the direction, but they're going to help you land in a good place and make sure not only your website is designed well, but it's designed well for search so that people actually find you. And so I would say, hey, listen, if you can invest somewhere in that, in something right now in 2025, take a look at your website and start by investing there.
I agree. That is so important. It is the new online foyer for churches, right? That's where they first walk in. They've got to have that good first impression. This was so helpful. Thank you. I know that a lot of communications directors are going to get a lot of great information out of this, and I feel like I learned from it too. So thank you, Lauren and Brooke, so much for taking the time to talk today. And awesome. Looking forward to seeing you soon. And thank you, everybody, for listening today.